Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth day of 2022 Virtual Island Summit. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Kata Magyar. I'm the Director of Innovation Programs and Events at Island Innovation, and I will be your moderator today. Island Innovation is a global network and creative agency helping advance innovation and drive sustainable change across island communities worldwide. I encourage you to visit islandinnovation.co to learn more about our network and services. I'm very excited to be presenting this session about how can building an entrepreneur accelerator program help the resilience of island territories. I have personal interest in everything in innovation, and I believe entrepreneurship moves the world forward and can solve a lot of our current problems. Before we begin, I invite you to use the chat function to introduce yourself, where you're joining from, and make any comments during the session. A poll will appear now on your screen, so you can let us know where you are connecting from, what sector and the industry you belong to. Yeah, I see people are joining. Hello from St. Lucia, free from Feed Island. I'm waiting for the poll results. I cannot see them right now. Yes. So 50% from the audience is from North America, then the rest is from Europe and the Caribbean, and a smaller portion from Asia. Thank you for joining, because that's really quite late or early for you right there. Before we begin, yes, please make sure that you use the Q&A function for your questions, and I'll do my best to ask all your questions to the speakers. Mention your name and who are you addressing your question to. Our panel today will be comprised of Bonnie Lutas from Turtle, Jordan Tenenbaum from UNDP Barbados, and Mike Tushushka from the city of Summerside in Prince Edward Island. Island Innovation has teamed up with Interreg European Union to help change makers to achieve a greater impact on islands around the world, and created an online course called Islands of Innovation. Let me introduce you our first speaker, Bonnie Lutas, advisor to EU Interreg Islands of Innovation project, and she will give you more details of the innovation course. Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Kata. Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. As Kata mentioned, I'm going to talk to you today about a digital Train the Trainer course, which we've developed with the European Union Islands of Innovation project, and partnered with Island Innovation to get that course to you. And it's a digital Train the Trainer course to accelerate innovation on islands. So before I get too deep into the course, I'm going to tell you about the development of it. So the Islands of Innovation project was funded by the Interreg European Union project, and it started 5 years ago. The project is a collaboration between 6 European island regions who joined forces to explore opportunities to accelerate innovation on their islands. Some of the project partners, which I actually see a couple of in the chat, are Friesland from the Netherlands, so the northern area of the Netherlands. We have the Azores from Portugal, Sarema from Estonia, the North Aegean Islands in Greece, as well as Arditi from Madeira, so that's Madeira's innovation agency. And from Samso in Denmark, we have the Energy Academy. So those were the project partners. And throughout the project, each of the partners hosted co-creation workshops in which they invited local stakeholders to come up with ideas for new projects, products, and services that tackle the local challenges that the island was facing. Together, all the partners worked the results of the projects into a tool that we developed with the project called Tipping. And the Tipping tool essentially helps governments work with the local community to harvest their innovation ideas, and then to get those innovation ideas into policy so that the policy of the island can support the development of the projects. So as I mentioned, the tool that was developed through this project is called Tipping, and it is essentially a wheel in which you can focus on a specific topic or challenge that an island has, and then evaluate that based on the different spokes of the tool. So, for example, if you identify that your island has challenges with wanting to have a more sustainable tourism industry, or wanting to become circular, or if you want to work on renewable energy transitions, you gather local stakeholders together from different sectors, so cross-sectoral stakeholders, and basically evaluate the local government's progress on how well they support ideas that you have for that topic. So I will give you some examples. Some of the areas which the tool focuses on are new challenges for the creative sector. So what you would do, for example, is you would host a workshop in which you have the topic of energy independence, and then all the different stakeholders would come together and evaluate how the government is supporting the energy transition by supporting new challenges for the creative sector, or, for example, by long-term cooperation with SMEs and NGOs. Another aspect is how well do they support the energy transition by stimulating the Young Entrepreneurs Network, and so on. So this tool helps you kind of go through this criteria and evaluate where the island is today versus where they want to go, and then backcast to take steps of how are we going to get there. The process of the workshop is, as I mentioned, gathering together stakeholders from business, government, academia, and civil society who are all working towards the same goal. And after going through the tool and coming up with different ideas for projects of how to get where they want to go, the host of the workshop develops an innovation roadmap that outlines steps of how to get from the island is now to where they want to go, based on the input from the stakeholders who were in the co-creation session. The host then works on this with their coalition of willing and able, so that includes influential people from the island who can help to push this process forward, and then initiate that the projects actually get support from local government, but also from the community. So what we did is we tested this a number of times on the participating islands, and we developed a guide, Train the Trainer guide, to empower change makers on the island to host their own innovation workshops. And this guide was in the form of a written PDF document that could be downloaded from the website. And so we thought, okay, great, now everyone's going to read the guide and they're going to go and host their own co-creation workshops and accelerate innovation on their island. But we kept getting a lot of requests for us to actually travel to islands and host these workshops for them, which was not the initial idea. So we decided to come up with a digital e-learning course where we would digitize the learnings from the different islands and the process of training trainers to host these workshops into more of an interactive thing. So it's essentially a video course with tutorials on how to do background research, how to invite stakeholders, how to host the workshop, how to harvest the results and write them into an innovation roadmap. And then it's also supported from examples of projects along the different sectors from islands around the world. Yeah, we're still working and improving the course all the time. We piloted it on 3 Azorean islands over the past year, where they used the course to train coaches from the Azores to then host these workshops. And yes, now as we integrate all the improvements from that pilot project, we partnered with Island Innovation to get the course out to the wider island audience. So essentially, all of Island Innovation's wonderful island networks all over the world, so that other people who are not a part of the Islands of Innovation Interreg Europe project can participate in the course, host their own co-creation workshops, and then also integrate feedback so that we can keep adding examples about inspiring projects from islands. So I would like to invite you all to sign up for the course. We're going to be launching the beta cohort starting in mid-November, and there's limited spots available. So if you sign up soon, you will. We will look at your application, and hopefully you can join other trainers in accelerating their innovation process. I believe Kata posted the link in the chat, but you can also visit the Island of Innovation website, go into the content tab in the resources section, and then you will find the course there. So I welcome all of you, and I'm really excited to hear about your experiences and to hear now from examples of islands who are accelerating innovation.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Yes. You can also reach out later to myself, kata@islandinnovation.co, if you have any more questions. But yes, a couple of times we already posted the link where you can sign up, but if you have any questions. Thank you, Bonnie. So if we managed to pique your interest and you think like you already have enough innovation and enough projects on your island, then let's see an example then how an accelerator can serve the ecosystem. We are going to hear from Jordana Tenenbaum, Head of Solution Mapping at Accelerator Lab UNDP Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. She will talk about how UNDP Accelerator Labs create a change. Thank you, Jordana.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I'm just going to make this full screen. You can see my screen.
Yes, looks great.
All good.
All right. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Jordana Tenenbaum, and I'm the Head of Solutions Mapping at the Accelerator Lab for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean from the United Nations Development Program. Super to be a part of this session on how can building an entrepreneur accelerator program help the resilience of island territories. So I'll just start with a bit about what the UNDP Accelerator Labs are and how this came to be. So the labs were first launched in 2019 as an experimental way to change the way that UNDP does development by learning really about what works and what doesn't work in sustainable development, with the goal of attaining the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, by 2030. And the thinking behind this is that because of the speed, dynamics, and real complexity of today's challenges, a lot of what we have done in the past up until now doesn't really apply anymore or to the future. So our current development practices need to keep pace with all these rapid changes and complexities that are occurring. So really, to address this rapid pace of change, the UNDP Accelerator Labs were formed to create what we call the world's largest and fastest learning network on sustainable development challenges, including on the blue economy, of course, very relevant to SDGs, plastic waste, renewable energy, and more. And this learning network was co-built as a joint venture with the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany and the Qatar Fund for Development. So those are our two core donors. And as you can see from this map, this is a global initiative with a network now comprised of 91 labs serving 150 countries globally. And we're all tapping into local innovations to create actionable insights and really to reimagine sustainable development for the 21st century. And in the context of small island developing states in particular, the Accelerator Lab has a presence in many different SDGs, including in Trinidad and Tobago, Dominican Republic, and Cabo Verde. So in terms of our own specific Accelerator Lab, which covers the entire Eastern Caribbean region, making up 10 different countries, we were first established in 2019. And since then, our frontier challenge, as we call it, has been on solving challenges in the blue economy space. And primarily, we have done that through a focus on a few core areas of exploration, including in renewable energy, sustainable tourism, waste management, and fisheries. We've run a series of core experiments, including on alternative uses of sargassum for the production of bioplastics and biofuels, that's pictured here, as well as the application of new forms of technology used to solve blue economy challenges. So this has been done, for example, by applying blockchain systems to improve fisheries traceability in the tuna space, as well as the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to map and monitor coral reef species. And all of these innovative experiments have been led by local innovators or local entrepreneurs who are already working on various small-scale explorations in the blue economy. And I'll get into why that is by design. As well as of late, our core experiment from our lab has been on a system called Blue Digital. which is an app and web-based portal we developed to improve fisheries value chains for participating fisherfolk, government, the tourism sector, and the general public. We've all linked together through a marketplace offering. Lastly, in terms of our broader country office, I just wanted to note that we are a multi-country office, so again, covering 10 islands, and we focus on 3 core clusters or areas of development, which are poverty and governance, prevention, recovery and resilience, and sustainable solutions, energy, and climate change. So in tandem with innovators, the Accelerator Lab works in what we call short learning loops or cycles, in which we run numerous experiments to test and see what works well and what does not work, so that we do this learning within loops, and we follow this path of sense making, exploration, testing, and growing or scaling. And through those loops, we bring innovators into our learning journey. So for example, through research supported by our Accelerator Lab, we supported a local entrepreneurial chemist, a young student in Barbados, who was exploring and validating the use of sargassum seaweed and starch extracts, so potato peels in this case, to create a bioplastic. And she moved through this exact learning loop pictured here in order to do so. And throughout all of our explorations with innovators, there are a variety of different principles that are applied at the Accelerator Lab, which I think are important to note here. So this includes learning as a collective, working out loud and sharing our findings with our broader networks so that we're learning quickly and more efficiently. We also aim to accelerate or work with what already exists. So I think this is a really unique feature of the Accelerator Labs. Instead of coming from the top down and creating new solutions, we actually map and identify emerging solutions that innovators are already tinkering with on the ground. And then we see how we can best support their work through either capital, technical expertise, or partnership generation. And all throughout, we aim to embrace complexity and uncertainty, which of course is particularly important when we're trying out new tools or approaches. So for example, we use a lot of futures thinking, foresight, and collective intelligence. It's important as well that we are constantly tapping into new and uncommon data sources, which could be, for instance, geospatial data or big data sources. And then lastly, one of the principles that I think is most important is that we really increase the diversity of the people that we engage with. So this means bringing in persons to the development table, and especially persons who are typically excluded from the development discussion. We're trying to bring them further into our fold and to increase that diversity. So for the purposes of this session on how Accelerator Labs can help build the resilience of island territories, I think it's important to note how exactly we work with stakeholders with the aim of building resilience. So first and foremost, we begin our work by sensing, observing, or listening in on what the needs are on the ground. So we try to identify the sticky or persistent challenges that locals are experiencing. And then as well, we identify the grassroots solutions that locals are developing in response to those challenges. Once those challenges and solutions have been mapped and gaps or need areas have been identified, we then try to build the capacity and as well as the initiatives of stakeholders and beneficiaries. And this is done in a variety of ways. So for example, through enhancing access to capital for research and development, or by increasing access to technical knowledge and relevant partners that are required for growth. And at our Accelerator Lab in particular, we have done this work in combination with regional calls for solutions, hackathon challenges, and our own lab run experiments, through which we have collaborated with government agencies, innovators, and the private sector. And through all of this, the end goal is to test and experiment with novel approaches to persistent development challenges in order to find new sustainable solutions that can be scaled at large. So backing up a little bit to the reason why we focus on supporting grassroots innovators, I just wanted to emphasize that this is because we know that the people who are closest to their own problems and who face them on a daily basis are often the people with the best knowledge of them and who have the best solutions to them. So we always look to what communities are doing at the grassroots level first in order to solve their own challenges. And thus far, our support to grassroots innovators has focused on some core areas, including scaling or growing innovations, as well as solving for informality through digitization, finding new ways to tackle climate change, and transitioning to new food systems. And that's at a global level. To do so, we frequently apply new methodologies. Again, I mentioned futuristic foresight thinking, collective intelligence. We look at behavioral change and positive deviance, for example, in an effort to try new approaches and to surface new insights and learnings. So in practice, a part of what these methods and approaches help us do is to map and identify what innovators are doing on the ground. And personally, as a solutions mapper in Barbados, I have done this by mapping and categorizing the work of grassroots innovators across different categories in the blue economy. So for example, in the Eastern Caribbean, I have mapped new cosmetics products that use sargassum seaweed and help us to solve for sargassum influxes in the blue economy, which are quite problematic, as well as locally developed fertilizer products made of sargassum seaweed. And then globally, pictured on the right-hand side here, all the accelerator labs then add these local or regional identified solutions to a larger database or a public database that helps us to catalog these real seeds of change that are occurring on the ground in order to also find potential opportunities for their growth and scaling while convening these innovators or solution holders together. So lastly, I wanted to share a couple examples of how we have boosted the regional entrepreneurship space in practice. As mentioned, this often combines some mixture of small scale seed capital, as well as technical expertise, partnerships, and new sources of scaling. So for our particular lab, we have launched regional calls for solutions in the blue economy and hackathons, which has led to our support and growth of a variety of different blue economy experiments or trials, tests, pilot projects, which have all helped to validate the hypotheses or the hunches that these innovators brought to our calls for solutions in the first place. So I think I'm at time now, but that is a quick summary of how we have boosted entrepreneurship in the region, in the Eastern Caribbean, in the blue economy. So thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Jordana. Yes, we are right on time. So, and last but not least, then let me introduce you to Mike Tushka, the Director of Economic Development of the city of Summerside in Canada, Prince Edward Island. And he is the godfather of the Living Lab and Summerside Exchange programs too, my addition. And yeah, and special thanks to both Jordan and Mike, like they are hit by the hurricane. So thank you for being still here with us.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kata, for the introduction. And I think somebody's going to share my screen, but just quickly, my name is Mike Tushka, Director of Economic Development. So my job, business attraction, business retention. I'm going to try and quickly walk through kind of our perspective of on the ground in terms of building an ecosystem from a municipal government perspective and talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing. And hopefully my slides will come up, but we'll get going anyway in any case. So the city of Summerside is a small city on the east coast of Canada, and we consider ourselves kind of a gateway to North America for foreign firms. We're known for a number of industry sectors, including fishing, farming, aerospace, light manufacturing, but really right now dominated through the clean tech industry and kind of building the Living Lab and the Summerside Exchange, which is a kind of hybrid hybrid kind of solution to try and grow ecosystems. There we are. So we can go to the next slide and talk a little bit about, typically Summerside, as an island, we're challenged like most islands around the world from geography. And so we become primarily an export market. We are a population of around 16,000 people, service an area of about 80,000 people, and an island of 160,000 people. We certainly pride ourselves on being what we call a 24-hour development cycle between ourselves, the rest of North America, Europe, and Asia. And then what we also recognized early on is that we're sitting on a lot of robust infrastructure, much like everyone on this audience tonight has, that there's a lot of value intrinsically embedded in that. And just as a point of reference, Summerside currently has 58% of its energy coming from renewable sources, which poses a lot of challenges for islands. And we're actually developing a $70 million solar battery project that will take us to 70% renewable on our way to 100. And a lot of that we're doing was built out of the Living Lab and built out of kind of our Exchange Accelerator. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Much like most development agencies, I'm an economic developer practitioner. We offer traditional services to businesses looking to expand, grow, relocate. But what we realized in the early 2000s is that, as I mentioned, we're sitting on a pretty sophisticated infrastructure. We own our own electric utility. We own our own wind farm. We now own our own solar farm. We own our own waste treatment facility. We own all the fiber that's going throughout the city. We said to ourselves, man, we have some pretty sophisticated infrastructure, much like Chicago, New York, Beijing, London, UK. Why don't we try and open that up to entrepreneurs to develop what we call an opportunity for them to validate, commercialize, and accelerate their kind of product development and customers. So we offer in Summerside what we call a first customer experience to a lot of individuals. We'll go to the next slide, I guess. So we've been doing this under the Living Lab program. This is kind of the ethos of what we kind of go out and promote to companies, basically saying that we own a lot of infrastructure. We have a lot of technology behind us in terms of our organization, probably 150 years of experience when you add up all the people in the various departments, and that we suggested, let's open up our infrastructure, let people play with it, let people test in it, let people innovate in it, let people make us smarter, let us help them become smarter so that they can grow their markets, grow their business, and drive innovation, not only to a particular company, but drive innovation to our residents and make them stronger. So we created a Living Lab. We've been doing it for about 20 years, but didn't realize we were doing it, but we decided to launch in a more formal way. And the important thing that we decided when we started this program is we tied Living Lab to economic development. So it's one thing to create a lab and create entrepreneurs, but we also wanted to create jobs. We wanted to create wealth for our community, and that's how we formalized this process. So we'll go to the next slide if we can. And basically, in Summerside, we're small. 16,000 people, but we actually have international connections. One of our major partners is obviously Samsung, who's doing a lot of amazing work inside of Summerside. So we needed to be authentic, and I think that was a key for us. And we needed to understand that you can't keep offering things to people and expect them to take you up on that offer, because you needed to understand what the challenges of businesses are. We had to be authentic in terms of making sure we promised what we could promise and deliver on what we promise. And then we had the proof of showing businesses how you can engage in the various sectors to help them understand and grow their business, as well as create opportunities for new markets. So I'll go to the next slide there. So in terms of just quickly going through, when we look back at over the 20 years, we decided as a municipality that we owned our own utility, but we decided we want to get into renewable energy. And with that came a huge amount of challenges, but we ended up building our first wind farm of 15 megs. And then throughout the years, we began doing work in the software industry, doing work in the, I'll call it municipal infrastructure works industry. And we actually, much to the chagrin of telecom companies, built our own fiber network. Because we wanted to manage the control of renewables, which were variable. And then we saw an opportunity in there to open up our fiber to companies in the software space that wanted to do that. We also looked at partnering with companies in terms of offering incentives to our local residents and businesses for peak shaving. We were the first adopters on Prince Edward Island for electric vehicles, and that was a huge challenge, but we managed to pull our way through that. And we were the first municipality to actually do adoption of public car chargers as well as residential home chargers. So we drove innovation on that front. We'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about some of the things. And then in 2015, we actually met a company in Beijing that was looking to expand in North America, didn't know how. Came to us. We work with them on product enhancements, product development. We actually bought their product. And now they're a going concern and selling across North America. And then 2018, I think, is when we first started our partnership with Samsung SRE to construct the first in the world solar battery system, which was behind the meter to prove technology and save costs in the municipality. And those are just some of the things that I mentioned. 2021, this past year, we started a $65 million solar battery project with Samsung to drive our innovation and renewables to a whole new level. we'll go to the next slide there. These, I won't stay on this, but this just gives you a sense of some of our living lab customers. So we've had a local university group that actually piloted with our utility a storage system for heat pumps. We've done municipal infrastructure, we've done software, and now we're currently focusing quite heavily on the clean tech, including hydrogen as our next foray. So we'll go to the next slide. I was asked what kind of, I guess, our crowning achievement has been, and obviously Samsung is a big international partner. We're really pleased to partner with them. But I would say it was a company out of Ottawa that came and helped us understand how to maximize the efficiency of renewable energy. And then on that slide there, you're seeing a picture of a Bryan Adams concert that was hosted in Summerside last month. It was actually run on 100% renewable energy, which is a first that we've found in the world. So it was pretty exciting. And Blue Wave actually, through the work in Summerside and through the work that they did in the Living Lab, were able to land a contract with Tata in India. And when the CEO of Tata approached Blue Wave and said, "This is what we want to do. If you think you can do it, we'll give you a contract." And Blue Wave said, "Well, we're already doing it in Summerside, so absolutely we can do it." So those are just some of the kind of, I'll call it, crowning achievements of our success to date, and we've got a long way to go still. So we'll go to the next slide. I was asked a little bit about what were some of the barriers in us adapting to our ecosystem of the Living Lab and kind of the development of the Summerside Exchange. The culture within inside of a municipal organization is not very innovative, to be polite, I'll call it. You know, there's obviously regulations, short-term thinking, resources, shifting priority. But I think the biggest one is the fear of failure and the fear of risk. And it took us a little while to get our organization to wrap its head around kind of the intent of trying to create a lab in which we can drive innovation and help entrepreneurs grow their businesses. And we'll go to the next slide. In terms of some of the things that we do, we're not the smartest folks in the world, we'll be the first to admit it. And that's why we try and work with as many partners as we can. So obviously we work with our federal government, our provincial government, private sectors, industry associations. We work with the private sector quite extensively. We find there's a lot of innovation and opportunity there. And then we've also created recently the Summerside Exchange, which is a more formalized living lab where we actually have challenges now that are trying to address real problems in the real world. We have an international board of directors that actually vet companies. We are exploring and going to be developing a venture capital fund to help companies that look to expand and want to expand and do it within Summerside. So we'll go to the next slide. So this, just a couple quotes, and I won't go into detail. I'm sure you can be shared these after, but it just gives you a sense. We're currently working with a gentleman in Poland who's developed an innovative technology for wind farms. We actually have a problem with our wind farm in terms of making sure it's maximizing the energy output. So this gentleman's coming to North America because he wants to expand. We've decided to take a risk and work with this gentleman, and he's now established an office here in Summerside and a software team, and so we're pretty excited. We like to use the quote, delivering results, not promises, and that's what we try and do with all our clients. And we'll go to the next slide. And I know Kata says I'm running out of time, and I think I'm near the end if I'm not mistaken. So that in a nutshell is, I guess we could wrap it up here, Kata, but that in a nutshell is kind of who Summerside is. Just a little bit of a different approach from a municipal perspective. And we're always looking to talk to people, always looking to learn more from people. So I'm glad to be part of this, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I'm going to check the questions from the audience, but meanwhile, just to start the conversation, and if I can ask Bonnie and Jordana to come back on the screen, please. Then how do you attract the talent? How do you reach your target audience? Mike, you mentioned that now you work with another company to vet the companies, but before that, how you were doing, and Jordana too, how do you find the talent to participate in your Accelerator lab?
For us, it's just through going to different trade shows, going to meet different people, doing as much social media as we can. We use matchmakers, just talking to people. That's basically it. Letting people know what you're trying to achieve, and soon you find people that want to play with you. So,
yes. Jordana, do you want to?
Yes, I think for us, historically, it's really been through our calls for solutions, our hackathons, sort of broader innovation challenges and the ways in which we've engaged innovators. Of course, yes, we use social media, we use all of our own channels, but it's really been through those calls that we've built a regional network, noting that, you know, we're quite disconnected with our 10 islands. So that has been how we've kind of brought everyone together thus far.
Thank you. A question for you, Mike. What were the enabling factors that needed to be in place for the Living Lab to be effective?
There's lots, but it's organizational buy-in. I would suggest to you is the key enabling factor. If you don't have the buy-in and the resources of your team around you, nothing's going to work. And that didn't come easy inside my organization. You know, understanding a utility, their main concern is making sure the power comes on and off when you ask for it. So you have to come up with different strategies and different. So in our case, we did mirroring of opportunity. But anyway, I'd love to speak more, but we'll keep going. And that was just one of the organizational buy-in is a key enabling factor.
I assume, Jordana, this is for you. What strategies were employed to engage women-led organizations in the Caribbean?
Yes, and I think that was Candace's question. So you are correct to note that women-led organizations in the Caribbean do face particular challenges. And this includes some of the challenges that they face really as owners, employees working in micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In terms of strategies, really our outcomes and our indicators of success as a project itself include specific markers for women. So as a part of our planning and initiatives that we run, including women in our efforts is a deliberate part of our project design. So that is one way. Additionally, also our office follows a regional gender strategy that was developed by our gender specialist, which ensures that we're looking at gender according to the unique realities that women face in the Eastern Caribbean, such as them being tied to MSMEs that are historically dependent on tourism.
Thank you. Mike, is energy independence created by a top-down command structure, as we have today via high-voltage grid networks, or should we reinvent the system to be bottom-up and literally self-empowering?
That's a tough question. I'm going to say both. I'm going to say both. So if you don't have a strong and robust large infrastructure, you're not going to have a strong, robust, bottom-up infrastructure. We focused initially on the top down. We are now putting all our energy into bottom up. So I think it needs to be a combination of both.
Thank you. Jordana, to apply as an accelerator UNDP, do you prioritize the government sector? What are the main focus of the UNDP in a new startup private sector?
Yes, so you prioritize the government sector. So the government is certainly our main stakeholder or beneficiary. However, we also aim to include the private sector, civil society, academia, NGOs, really any relevant partner to the particular project that we are working on. So no, they're not our only client. What are the main focus areas of UNDP? I'm not sure I understand the question. What are the main focus of the UNDP in a new startup or private sector? Really, it's innovation, which is maybe not the best answer, but particularly in relation to the blue economy, we're looking at private sector approaches that have not been done or tested or used before that can help us create change, essentially. So we're looking to try and test new products and services.
Thank you. I'm not sure for whom is this. Yeah, for the next questions, please, like if you have addressing a specific speaker, just put their name down. How can a Philippine NGO supporting projects of island-based university to have a solar energy project? I'm not, it's mentioning the Catadun State University.
Read that again.
If you can clarify your question a little bit, yeah. How can a Philippine NGO, and it says the name of the NGO supporting projects of an island-based university to have a solar energy project?
Yeah, the only thing I could think of, there's a lot of talent and expertise inside the university, and we use our local university for labor enrichment as an example. And then working with that university to try and find funding opportunities and move the project forward is the best I could suggest to that. So.
Thank you, Mike. And Jordana, you mentioned like increasing diversity. Like, can you elaborate on that? Is your focus on finding local talent or attracting talent to the certain islands? Is there any cross-project collaboration between the islands?
Cross-project collaboration between the islands? No, not exactly. So in terms of increasing diversity, we really try to work with grassroots innovators. So that's our number one. So, not necessarily just going to the government, not going to the private sector, but going to entrepreneurs, going to startups, going to small scale innovators who are, maybe trialing backyard aquaculture products, for example, or projects, and bringing them into our discussion because they're typically excluded from the development conversation. So really going into the community at the grassroots level and bringing them in.
Thank you. This is a generic question to any of the speakers, that how do you measure impact of your program, of your accelerator? Bonnie, even if you can chip in, if you planned for this.
Yeah, hi. So, there's many different ways to measure impact. We actually have an impact measurement specialist who collaborates on our project. So we use the impact management norms and their methodology. Depending on the type of project, you could also use a life cycle analysis software, for example, if you're looking at environmental footprinting specifically. But for more kind of social and overall progress, we use impact management project methodology. So if you want to learn about how to do that, just Google impact management project and you'll see a lot of tips.
Thank you. Mike, you were about to answer.
I think for us, in terms of the metrics, we have a number of KPIs, but certainly there's a number of clients that we're able to support through the programs. We look at the jobs created. We look at the opportunity for those businesses to align more contracts, those sorts of things, new products in the market. There's tons. Yeah, those are just some thoughts I have.
Thank you. Our next question is, what challenges do you have getting collaboration between government and private sector? How to overcome?
What challenges? There's lots. But in all
just to
honesty,
mention a few.
Yeah, just to mention a few. But in all honesty, it's about relationships and it's about understanding. And some of the challenges are in the business of making money. Municipalities, for the most part, are in the business of providing service. And so you need to come up with a strategic balance, I would say, in terms of trying to ensure that both mutual goals are understood, respected, and move forward. There's lots of other challenges, but that's the basic premise of it. You're in the relationship game. You have to figure out how you both can succeed, and that's the big key for us.
Yeah, I will agree with that as well. A lot of it is to understand where both sides are coming from and really try to find a balance of where there's win-win opportunities. Yeah, also just getting them to speak the same language in some ways. Not literally the same language, but yeah, they have different goals, different ways of communicating, different ways of providing documentation, different ways of working. So to align all those, you really have to look for the overlap.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just mention speed or pace. So something that I've noticed is that the private sector often works much faster than the government or the public sector, which is hard to manage, right, in terms of finding opportunities to work together, as they're just not moving at the same speeds. And of course, that's for a variety of different reasons.
Thank you. Jordana, another question for you. Do you support manufacturing? The reason asked is that we are an agriculture innovator with proven systems, crop circle farms. We are in the process of setting up a feed on island demonstration farm in Antigua. We are looking to set up a manufacturing space in the Caribbean for our spiral farm patterns and the component of our fertilizer system.
Yeah, really interesting to hear of that solution and that approach. I'll just share really quickly, we have not supported manufacturing as yet. That doesn't mean that we can't. But I would say if there is an innovative way in which you're manufacturing, so for example, is it more sustainable or more inclusive? We would love to hear more about that and see how we could support or maybe connect you with a relevant manufacturing partner in the region. But it's not something we have traditionally supported, no.
Can you tell us more about so each accelerator in the UNDP has their industry focus?
Yes,
because you were mentioning that mainly you are working on blue economy issues.
Yes, so we all apply the same approaches, the same methods to development, the development challenges that we're looking at, but each accelerator lab has a different frontier challenge area or different focus. So we focus on the blue economy, but we are actually the only lab that's purely devoted to the blue economy out of the 91 labs. So other labs work on depopulation, energy, migration, refugee crises, whatever challenge is most relevant to their country or region.
Thank you. And to both of you from the accelerator side, are you contacted from the outside to share different solutions? Like Mike, you are publishing a lot about your case studies. Then are you contacted to apply the solution in other islands, or not even islands, in other regions or other part of Canada?
To a certain extent we are. Ours are more project-based inquiries, I'll say. So if we launch a different product or solution, there's other municipalities across North America that are asking, okay, how'd you do that? How'd you fund it? How'd you make it work? So indeed we are. But what we try and do is let the private sector build those relationships as well. And we're there as a credible source to back up what they're trying to say. So.
And you mentioned there was a lot of fear, like when building the Living Lab and the accelerator, that how come the government is, you managed to convince to say, take such risk, take on such innovative projects?
Well, you did call me the Godfather. For me, in all honesty, it was that first win that as you build wins, I'll call them, and projects, you start to build credibility and you start to build momentum. But governments typically are risk adverse. And so, and I mean it internally and externally, even our lawyers and insurers are. But as you build more credibility in the market and move forward, you start to get people thinking a little differently. And I'm going to tell you, that took about 10 years. So.
Yeah, so it's resilience and endurance then.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. To Jordana, how can the private sector support the work of the UNDP Accelerator Labs, for example, through advisory, mentoring, coaching, etc.?
Yes, I believe that question was from Laura. So hi, Laura. We actually spoke a couple of years ago. But yes, in response to your question, Laura, the Accelerator Labs and UNDP are definitely embracing the private sector more and more. So for example, at our office recently, we have developed a private sector engagement strategy in order to bring the private sector further into our work. So it's definitely a big goal of ours. In terms of how, I think all of the ways that you have identified, including advisory services, mentorship, and coaching, have all been applied at UNDP quite successfully, and there'll be many more opportunities for that in the future. But I think more specifically, the private sector can work with UNDP and the Accelerator Labs as well more closely by helping to build an enabling environment for innovation in the private sector. And just speaking from the Caribbean, for instance, the innovation space is still quite nascent and emerging. And I think the private sector has many valuable insights on that they could share. So kind of building that enabling space is something that I foresee the private sector helping us with.
Thank you. I encourage the audience to still have a couple of minutes left if you want to ask any more questions. Meanwhile, I would ask, so what was your biggest success story so far in the Accelerator program? Jordana, the Barbados program this is the second year it's running, right?
This is actually,
highlight one.
Yeah, it's coming up on we just passed our third year, I should say. We've been renewed for funding, so we're going to continue beyond what we had envisioned, which is great as well. So you're asking for a case or for an example?
Yes,
Yeah.
a case, an example.
Yeah, so one of our favorite experiments, which we speak about quite often, was called BlueBot. That was through a call for solutions and a blue tank challenge that we did in 2019 and 2020. So one of the successful candidates from that applied underwater robotics. We brought in robots to Barbados. They're from Asia, and took quite a while to get there. And the underwater robots were deployed in Barbados in order to map and monitor specific coral reef species. And from that trial, from that experiment, we used machine learning, artificial intelligence in combination with some other technologies in order to develop 10 open data sets on coral reef species. We're quite proud of that. We're trying to introduce that concept of open data and open source information to government and to other stakeholders in the region as well. So that was, a successful pilot project that we are quite proud of. And just touching on some earlier points, that's an example of something that we could scale to another region or another island state within our remit. So that's a phase 2 that we are looking at, is how can we then take those learnings and grow and scale them globally. We'll probably start with the region, but we can take them globally as well.
Very impressive. Thank you. Bonnie, could you mention a positive example that what came out like after someone taking the course in the pilot program and working with these islands that you mentioned?
Yeah, thank you, Kata. What I really love about the program is especially the examples that come out of it. So when we host one of these co-creation workshops, or when the trainer hosts it, it's a collaboration of different stakeholders addressing a certain topic, but then you always have them saying, oh, this happened on this island and this was a really cool project. And then we collect those examples, and some of them have actually ended up as examples in the course. So for example, while working with Frisian Islands, the island of Ameland, a lot of islands talk about this issue of seasonality in tourism, and that workshop was specifically focused on sustainable tourism opportunities. And one of the participants told us about this art month that he had started quite a few years ago already, to bring tourists to the islands during the rainy season when it's cold and wet and nobody wants to visit. So he developed this art month Ameland, and that is now featured as an example in the course. So it's really nice that it's kind of a snowballing effect. So participants take the course, but then they also serve for feedback into the course, which is really nice, because then it just grows organically.
Yeah, that's so nice to hear that innovation is just spreading on its own.
Yeah, and it's exciting for us, because then we hear about so many cool things going on islands, and that's at the end of the day what it's all about.
Do you maybe have any questions to each other, the speakers? I was just bombarding you with so many questions that maybe I give you like. If no, then I will conclude our session. It was really exciting to learn about all these programs. And I invite everyone to check out the innovation course that we mentioned that we are launching. The first cohort is starting in November. You can already pre-register for it. And join our next session, which starts in 2 hours. This is the last session for today. The title is Towards a Low Carbon and Resilient Development in the Pacific Countries. I would like to ask, thank you for our speakers and all the attendees for joining us today at this session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.